A reading from the Gospel of John. Pilate said to Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you say this on your own, or have others told you about me?" Pilate answered, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom does not belong to this world. If my kingdom did belong to this world, my attendants would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not here." So Pilate said to him, "Then you are a king." Jesus answered, "You say I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." A lot of John's gospel tends to make me very uncomfortable. And this is mainly due to the use of the phrase, "the Jews," as well as the knowledge of how it helped spread anti-Semitism and hatred towards Jews throughout history. Somehow, as centuries went by, the phrase, "the Jews," became understood as those who were to blame for killing Jesus. Eventually, saying "the Jews" became synonymous with those who killed Jesus. Yet this is not what John's community says in this gospel. If we were able to somehow, hypothetically speaking, put John's community into a time machine and take them into the present day, they would be completely confused. You'd probably hear many of them say, "That's not what we meant when we used the phrase, 'the Jews.'" So what did they mean? In order for us to try and understand what they meant, we need to put ourselves into the mind of the writer as well as the community that the gospel was written for. The best way to do this is to see in what historical context John's gospel was written. What was going on at that time? Specifically, John's gospel was written at the point where the differences between Jews and Jewish Christians became irreconcilable to the point of even being volatile. As these groups became more polarized by the minute, so did their language. Finally, it climaxed to the year 95 AD when the Pharisees had enough and kicked the Jewish Christians out of the synagogues. The Pharisees ran the synagogues, so they had the most amount of power and represented all of mainstream Judaism as a result. What did it mean to kick someone out of a synagogue? It meant that you were excommunicated from Judaism. If the synagogue was the only church, if you will, that you knew, then it would result in your being stripped of your whole identity. You would lose a major portion of who you are. If you were a Jewish Christian, it would be reasonable for you to be extremely hurt and offended as a result. And what happens if you combine hurt feelings with stripping of a person's identity? It can result in very volatile and hurtful language at the group committing this injustice. And who were the Jews responsible for the Jewish Christians being kicked out of the synagogues and therefore being excommunicated from all Judaism? The Pharisees. And, by extension, any of the mainstream Jews who supported them and participated or even remained silent when the Christians were kicked out of the synagogues. So when John uses the phrase, "the Jews," they are in no way talking about all of Judaism being at fault for killing Jesus. It's just another case of taking their hurt feelings and inserting it into John's gospel. They never were blaming the Jews for killing Jesus. Far from it. What were they actually doing, moreover? They were lashing out at mainstream Judaism and the Pharisees for excommunicating them. How did they lash out at them specifically? They lashed out in the text of John's gospel. And what two-word phrase did they use to lash out at the Pharisees and those who supported them? The Jews. So when the Catholic Church comes out publicly and says that the Jews weren't responsible for killing Jesus, it isn't just because they are trying to play nice in hopes of improving Catholic-Jewish relations. It's because it's not historically accurate and, as such, has no basis in the Gospels.